I'm going to be real with you. It feels like every single day we wake up and the whole country is either on fire, about to be on fire, or someone's actively walking around with a gas can pretending they're the fire department. And today is one of those days where there's so much going on. But I wanted to talk to you all about a couple stories here that matter because they pretty much hit the same nerve. They're not random headlines. They're the same theme over and over. All right, we're going to talk about power, control, okay, punishment, and a government that keeps telling you to relax. We're protecting you while doing things that should make any sane person go, wait, who the hell is this for? As we saw last night, by the way, in the State of the Union. So I want to talk to you about Cuba. All right. I'll talk to you about the border shooting at sea, people dead, and an island that's basically buckling under a fuel and electricity crisis. I want to talk to you about the Epstein Files. Reports that the DOJ withheld and removed material tied to a minor abuse allegation. And by minor, I mean a child. That references Trump and the way this country treats transparency like it's some type of temporary inconvenience. And last, Minnesota Medicaid, man. Trump's administration, they're doing it again. They're doing it again, pausing about $250 million in federal Medicaid payments. Once again, claiming fraud and the question nobody in power wants to answer, which is who suffers first when you pause healthcare money? All right, so let's do this. If you're new here, my name's Alex, and this is the very first episode of Out Loud with Alex. And listen, I'm not trying to both sides anything today, okay? I'm not doing that, well, maybe they mean well. No, I don't think so, okay? A lot of people have been trying to tell me, hey, why don't you look at the other side of things? I'm not. There's no way, all right? I'm a citizen. I'm a veteran. You're a citizen. We live here. We pay for this. We're affected by all of it. So I'm going to ask the questions that seem kind of, I guess, illegal or taboo for people to freaking ask. You know, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? And who the hell benefits from this, from what's happening? And as always, I want to bring this to you in a way where we can have, open dialogue and open conversation. So I'm going to throw questions at you. Hopefully some of them, make sense, because I feel like I'm sitting here at 1:00 in the morning looking at my phone every single night, asking myself and asking others around me, am I losing my fucking mind? Is this really happening? Because shit, that's what it feels like. Let's start off right now with what's happening in Cuba, because it's very, very important. All right. Here's what we know from the things that have been reported. We'll start off with what happened with this Florida boat. Cuban authorities said that a Florida registered speedboat entered Cuban waters. They claimed the boat opened fire first, wounding a Cuban officer and Cuban forces while they returned fire. 4 people were dead, 6 injured, all on the boat. Now, that's what Cuba is saying right now. Some details are still not independently verified, but the incident itself, it's real and being reported as is, right? Someone from allegedly the United States just decided to drive their boat out there. Now, I kind of want to take a little pause, because no matter what your politics are, right? I need you to feel the weight of this. A deadly confrontation between a Florida registered boat and Cuban border forces. That's not just a weird story, especially with what's been happening with the U.S. withholding fuel and whatnot and oil for Cuba, or that's what they depend on. And we're going to get into that. Okay. But this is the kind of thing that can escalate really fast. All right. That's the kind of thing that ends up with politicians trying to pound their chest on TV because they think that they did something right for either side. And as I mentioned before, this timing matters, right? I don't know why this boat was out there, what was the reasoning, but Cuba isn't just dealing with this security incident. Cuba's in a full blown fuel and power crisis. They've got blackouts, fuel shortages, disruptions to daily life, transportation, flight operations. You've got airlines reacting, services strained. This isn't just like, oh, the economy is rough. This is the country basically struggling to not only keep its lights on, but to survive. There's real repercussions with what's going on, and human lives are going to be affected. Okay. When a country is collapsing under fuel shortages and rolling blackouts and what could be the biggest humanitarian aid crisis that we've seen so far, what happens to everything else? Okay. The crime, the smuggling, the migration, desperation, government crackdowns, propaganda, panic, everything just takes off. Now, I'm not here to romanticize the Cuban government. I'm not doing that. But I'm also not going to play dumb about how pressure campaigns and economic strangulation play out on regular people. Okay? We know this is a game for someone that we know because this is what always happens. When fuel is scarce, hospitals feel it. When electricity is unstable, refrigeration, food supply, it all goes to waste. Transportation breaks down, work and wages feel it. The country's going to fall. Okay? So ask yourself this. If we're living somewhere and the lights were out for hours every day and gas was basically non-existent and basic stability is collapsing, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Would you try to leave? Would you try to get resources any way you can? Would opportunities, what basically opportunists show up, not opportunities? Would desperate people do desperate things? And I have to answer with, yeah, we're going to see a lot of things happen. A lot of things, That's the context that makes this border shooting story more than just a headline. It feels like more like it's a flashpoint inside a larger collapse. Okay? I don't know about you, but do you trust government in moments like this to tell the full truth immediately? Because right now, it seems like everything is a nightmare. Cuba is calling this an infiltration, by the way, an infiltration type of situation. People outside Cuba will frame it differently. There will be a spin, there will be propaganda. But what we can say is the region is tense. Cuba is under severe strain. And when you put that strain plus security incidents together, you're going to get a whole lot of instability. Okay? A lot of it. So here's what I think we should be looking for next. Who were the people on the boat? What's confirmed by US agencies? Does this become a diplomatic escalation? And does this get used as justification for something much bigger? Which I'm pretty sure we all know where this is going to go. Because the man who's ending all wars sort of feels like he's trying to infiltrate or get in, do something. It's everything around this just feels weird. Okay? I'm telling you, this is exactly the kind of story that can be used to distract from absolutely everything else. And speaking of distractions, let's transition into another story that I kind of have here. And let's talk about the files, secrecy, and the system that is still protecting itself and those around with the money. Because while Cuba is dealing with a crisis, you can literally see, right, their power outages. People are going to die, by the way. There's going to be a humanitarian crisis in that country. Okay? People are going to be suffering in plain sight, and we're going to see it at firsthand, and it's going to be scary. All right? But here in the US, we've got a different kind of crisis. One you can't see unless you go digging. All right? Because if you can't see it, you can't demand accountability for it. Let's talk about the Epstein Files situation. There's something else that just arose, right? I'm going to be very careful and very direct here with the way that I bring this to you. There's reporting, including summaries of an NPR investigation and congressional statements alleging that the Department of Justice withheld and removed certain Epstein-related materials from a public release or public database. Now, among the missing materials, reporting describes FBI interview notes and records connected to a woman who alleged Trump sexually abused her when she was a minor. We got to be careful with the way we frame this. Okay? And let me say this clearly. We know that we have to say this is an allegation. But there's a lot of stuff behind it that sure as hell makes it feel them more than just that. Okay? A lot more. It is not the same to say it's an allegation without anything surrounding the allegation, right? Like you're just trying to dig, but there's just too much piling on. Too much piling on. Because here's what should terrify you as a citizen. If government agencies can decide what the public sees, when the public sees it, and what quietly disappears, then transparency becomes a goddamn performance. And when the subject of Epstein and the subject is powerful men, right? And the subject is abuse, the stakes aren't political. They're, excuse my French, fucking moral. Okay? Now, the debate right now is this. Critics say the DOJ has withheld and removed documents that should have been disclosed under transparency efforts and oversight. DOJ, in similar situations, has pretty much argued the removals, redactions are necessary for privacy, victim protection, or legal exceptions, right? Okay, fine. So privacy matters. Victims matter. I 100% agree. But here's the question I pose for you. Why does it always feel like privacy gets invoked hardest when the documents would embarrass the powerful or expose them? And here's another question. If these were withheld to protect the victim, why isn't there a clear explanation of what was removed? Why and under what authority? Because when you say trust us and you're the same institutions that have hidden things for decades, no, my friends. We're not doing the trust us anymore. I don't think with this administration there was any trust from the beginning. They're a bunch of fucking liars. We want the show us. Okay? Now, politicians are calling this illegal. They're talking about subpoenas. They're talking about transparency laws. But even beyond the legal fight, the bigger problem is the culture. It's all cultural. Because this country has a long goddamn history of protecting elites. It's like a goddamn reflex. And I want you to sit with this. How many times have you seen ordinary people get crushed by the system over the tiniest goddamn things? You miss a payment, you get a fee. You miss court, you get a warrant. You get pulled over. One mistake becomes your whole life. But when it comes to wealthy, powerful networks connected to exploitation, my friends, suddenly it's, well, we have to be careful. But careful for who? And here's where I'm going to say the part out loud that people are always afraid to say or don't want to get dirty, right? I want to play it safe. If the system is removing or withholding material because it implicates powerful people, then the system is not broken. It's functioning exactly as they designed it. Now, I'm not going to tell you that Trump definitely did X because that's not what the available reporting proves, right? Right now, what I am going to tell you is this. If the allegation exists in materials and those materials were withheld or disappeared from a public release, then we have a transparency crisis on top of everything else. I told you, man, if there's smoke, there's fire. Okay? And if you're asking me, Alex, why does this matter to me personally, as a lot of these little maggots do? It matters because it tells you how power works. Okay? It tells you that when the stakes are high, when reputations are at risk, when political stability is at risk, well, the public gets managed. We don't get informed. I want to repeat that for you. We, as the public, what this mother effer has been doing for almost 2 years, okay, is managing, not informing. See, here's a question that I want to pose to you now. Do you think that the Epstein information, right, universe is being released because they want accountability or because they want to control the narrative? And by the way, we know that they stopped. We know that they already said that they're not going to be releasing anything else. So we got what we got. And that is it. And they're still removing files as we speak right now. Okay? Because if this was any ordinary person's name in those files, do you think the same caution would apply? Right? Exactly. But I want to pivot to my last story here that I want to talk about, because it's the one that hits people in the wallet, and it's the one that's hitting people most in need, right? Because this administration is a piece of shit. We know this. They're fucking awful. All right? You've got international instability. You've got files that allegedly vanishes when they get too inconvenient, right? And then you've got the kind of domestic move that sounds like process, but can turn into real harm real fast. Actually, it is harmful. I don't know what I'm saying. All right? And that is this Minnesota and Medicaid situation. By the way, Dr. Oz is a piece of shit too. All right? If you didn't know, the Trump administration, through CMS, announced it is pausing about $250 million in Medicaid funding to Minnesota. Okay? They're calling it part of a crackdown on fraud. It's always about fucking fraud with these guys. All they got to do is look in the mirror and they'll find it. Oh, that's all they got to do. Okay? They're saying Minnesota has a window, about 60 days, to submit a corrective action plan and address what they claim are unsupported or potentially improper claims. This is mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling. Now, I'm not defending fraud. We understand that there's always small cases of fraud, right? Fraud should be investigated. Fraud should be prosecuted. But here's the part that they always skip in the press conference or whenever they're spewing out of their fat lips. When you pause Medicaid money, you're not pausing a spreadsheet. You're pausing healthcare cash flow. And Medicaid isn't some fringe program. It's millions of people nationwide. In Minnesota, it's a huge share of the population. Okay, there's a huge share of the population receiving coverage for basic fucking care. Children's health, nursing homes, disability supports. So, ask yourself this question. When the federal government, right, when the federal government holds back hundreds of millions of dollars, who the hell do you think is going to feel it first? Is it the fraudsters or is it the clinics, the nursing facilities, the rural hospitals, the people with chronic conditions, the families who are already barely keeping it together? I feel like they want to eliminate, they're trying to eliminate a certain group of citizens in the United States. Okay? This is where we should all start questioning their motives. Because if the goal is to stop fraud, you do targeted enforcement. You don't do a move that risks creating a care disruption and then say, well, you know what? Prove you're worthy and we'll turn the faucet back on. Fucking dumb. And you people who support this, bro, open up a fucking book. All right? That's a power move. That's comply or suffer. And Minnesota officials are pushing back hard, saying they've prosecuted fraud, that they'll fight it legally, and that this is a political punishment, which it fucking is. Now, maybe it's fraud. Maybe it's politics. Maybe it's both, honestly. But here's what I'm going to be focusing on, because if you're going to pause healthcare, okay, healthcare funding, you better have ironclad fucking evidence and a plan that prevents harm. Because we're doing this for integrity is the same line government this goddamn government uses for everything. All right? Ready? Surveillance, integrity. Censorship, integrity. Budget cuts, integrity. Meanwhile, people are suffering. So here are my thoughts. I've had plenty. I'll spew these to you. Do you trust this administration to protect vulnerable people while cracking down? No. Do you trust they won't expand the tactics to other states they don't like, all Democrat states? No. If your state was next, right, wherever you're living at, wherever you're listening to this right now, would you be okay with the federal government squeezing healthcare until your local leaders fall in line? Because that's basically what they want. Okay? You see the way he treated everyone at the State of the Union address that's not standing up or clapping for him, following in line. Fuck, man. All right? That's not anti-fraud. That's a threat. And I'm going to say the blunt part out loud, as if I haven't already. This administration keeps behaving like a piece of shit because they keep getting away with it. Okay? They do the thing first. Then they dare you to sue, dare you to protest, dare you to complain, and then they call you, ready for this one? Unpatriotic for noticing. That's what this administration does. All right. I think I've bored you enough, right? First episode. I want to connect these three stories because they're not separate, okay? Now, Cuba shows you what happens when fuel and economics collapse. Instability rises, desperation rises, and every security incident it's going to start looking like a potential escalation, right? Why was the ship there? We're going to shoot each other. You know, something's going to brew out of this, all right? The Epstein Files situation shows you what happens when the truth gets managed, not released. I said this in the show, managed. And Minnesota Medicaid shows you what happens when the government uses funding as leverage and real people become collateral in a political fight dressed up as program integrity. And the pattern is very simple, friends. If you're listening right now, they'll create chaos. Then they ask you to trust them to fix it. Okay? Because they want to be the superheroes. No. You see, we're not doing that. Okay, we're going to ask questions. We're demanding fucking receipts. We're demanding oversight. We're demanding audits, okay? We're demanding public logs and all the accountability that comes with it. Because the real threat isn't just any one of these three stories that I just spoke about. The real threat is the normalization of all of it, which is something that maggots just want to live by. They want to normalize everything this piece of shit says. Okay? No questions asked. So here's what I want you to do. First, talk about this. Don't let it die on a timeline. Bring it up in real life. Group chats, family, coworkers. Push it on them. Because silence is where this stuff goes to live forever, by the way. Second, demand specifics. If your representatives talk about Medicaid fraud, ask them, well, where's the goddamn evidence? Who's being targeted? How are patients protected? Because they don't have an answer for that. If they talk about transparency, ask, where's the goddamn audit trail? What was removed? Why was it removed? Who the hell authorized this? You know they're just going to give the same bullshit answer, right? I said so. I did it. Grand old Lord. And lastly, if you're listening to this and you're tired, I get it, but don't confuse exhaustion, right? Your exhaustion with defeat. They want you tired. They want you numb. They want you so over fucking whelmed, you stop caring. Don't give them that. By the way, if this episode hit you, share it. Follow the show on YouTube, where this is playing right now. If you want to keep up with everything I'm doing, hit the link in the bio. Before I go, I want you thinking about one last question. I've thrown a lot at you today, whenever the hell you're listening to this. If this is what they're willing to do out loud, what are they doing quietly? Okay? Think about that. All right, friends. This is, that was the very first episode here of Out Loud. I wonder if I can do these every week without losing my mind. I'm Alex. Follow me on the TikTok, Instagram, Out Loud with Alex. They're all the same. And I will try to see you on the next one.